Welcome to the Dance to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Jenny C. Cohen. Join me as I share stories of how life is a dance. I'm a cancer survivor, mother of two, and an award-winning performer who found that mind and body connected movement is vital to healing in a way that is safe and tailored to your life. I created Dance to Heal Wellness featuring the Spotlight Confidence Formula and also authored the best-selling award-winning book, Outside In Recovery, Dancing My Way Back to Myself After Breast Cancer. I will bring new ways to help you on your dance journey and healing path. Are you ready to move? Dance to Heal starts now. Welcome to the Dance to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Jenny C. Cohen, and today we have the amazing Victoria Volk. Now, here's the thing. We're talking about a topic for some of us that we don't quite understand or are actually slightly, how do I say the word?
Misinformed?
Misinformed. Exactly, Victoria. So let me just do her intro because I'm very excited about this particular guest and topic. Victoria is a self-published author and a certified grief recovery specialist. She's the creator and podcast host of Grieving Voices. She's a Reiki master, and she's also a certified biofield tuning practitioner. And a bunch of other amazing certifications. Go down to the intro and read her bio. Here's the thing. What I love is that she uses all of her strengths and skills to meet people where they are at and help those whose lives have been upended by grief and loss to go from surviving to thriving. Explain to us first, Victoria, who comes to you? Like, what kind of grief are they dealing with?
All kinds. And oftentimes, too, they come to do the work thinking they'll address one relationship, and what comes up is an entirely different relationship that really holds the most emotional weight in their hearts. That was the case for myself as well.
Really? I mean,
Yeah.
for me, grief is a many layered thing, I feel, because I think sometimes we don't quite even understand what the definition of grief is. Like, how does one define it in your field of work versus what mainstream, those of us outside of it, might think of it as?
That's a good question. I love that question. So, grief is the loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations. It is anything that you wish would be or could have been different, better, or more. And when we think about grief in those terms, it is absolutely a lot more to do with more than just death alone.
In my mind, it's coupled with death and loss, like just loss of
Most people think of that. Yeah,
yeah.
most people, but most people equate loss to loss of someone, right? Because we are taught how to acquire things and people, but not what to do when we lose them.
Because usually it's tied into many more layers than that person, right?
Absolutely. And, I just, and a lot of people don't think that their childhoods had as much impact. They don't give as much reverence to their childhoods having an impact on their present day life or adult life because we are afraid to look back, right? And most people, I'm using generalized statements because it's what I did. It's what so many people that come into the work that I do have done. Because again, we resort to what we know and what we know about grief and how to respond to it in a healthy way. We've been misinformed. We just have not been taught. This is not how to respond to grief in a healthy way is not taught. And so when we are met with life challenges, doesn't even have to be death of a person. That's why I'm coming back to that. There's more than 40 plus losses. When we have financial ruin, when we lose a home, when we are the victim of assault, or um, our sense of safety and security is stripped away. And there's so many different things that we experience in life. Loss of a pet, which is so minimized, miscarriage, minimized. So many losses are minimized, and we minimize because we tend to compare to other people when we hear other people's stories. Well, my story isn't, I didn't go through that, so my story isn't that bad. So I'm just going to like be quiet about what I experienced and not share. And I just need to get over it. So
Those words. Get over it.
yeah, yeah, get over it. And other people say that to us, right? So again, it comes back to resorting to what we know, and what we know is unhelpful, and it's often hurtful, not only to ourselves, but other people, because we will project what we know onto other people. If we were raised to get over it, we're probably more likely to tell other people, well, you should be over it by now, right? Because that's what we know. But I'm here to say, and this is what it's like, I get on a soapbox about this because by the age of 3, we have been taught 75% of how to respond to life. And by age 15, we take in the remaining 25%. So children are sponges. They are always watching, eyes, ears, just in the energy and space of other people, right? Of how they're responding to life. They take that in. Children take that in. A parent is stuck in traffic. Perfect. This is a great example. Kids in the car seat in the back, parent is losing their marbles because somebody cut them off in traffic, or or stuck in traffic, or something happens, right, in their life. Someone makes them mad at the cashier. The cashier's too slow, or the cashier isn't fast enough, or the cashier said something. These little micro moments that happen in our lives, we teach children how to respond to life in these micro moments. And so when a child is having a temper tantrum, well, it's natural, right, for a child to have a temper tantrum. But if it's something that they've learned, a behavior that they've learned to repeat to get their way, they're going to keep doing it. It's, and so we teach people how to treat us, and we teach people how to respond to life, little people. And those lessons do not go away in adulthood. And so when we reach adulthood and we have something challenging happening to us, we resort to what we know. And so that might be replacing the loss. As children, if we lose a pet, a parent might just be like, "Oh, this is pretty common actually," because a pet is often a first loss, or a grandparent. Don't talk about them. It makes me sad when we talk about grandpa. Don't talk about grandpa. Or the parent doesn't even have to say that. The child can see that when I bring up grandpa and I want to talk about grandpa because I miss grandpa, it upsets my parent. So I'm just not gonna, I don't want to upset my parent. So I'm just going to grieve alone. One of the myths. With the pet thing, children don't get the time or space to really fully express and sit with their emotions of losing a pet, which to them might have been a best friend. Instead, as parents, we want to take away that pain. We want them to feel better. So we just say, well, that's okay. We can get another pet. So then we get another pet and we replace the loss. There's another myth. So grieve alone, replace the loss. As adults, that's coming time back to what you said earlier. We were talking about you should be over it by now. Time heals all wounds. We all know that phrase. We all know it. Why do we know it? Because it's said so often and it's not helpful. So that's another myth. Keep busy. Adults are notorious and amazing at keeping busy, distracting themselves from their emotions because they're afraid to feel, don't want to feel. It doesn't feel good to sit with your emotions, the big emotions. Even when you're angry, it's uncomfortable. But you have that energy, that anger, that emotion has to come out or go somewhere. And so we are like tea kettles. We either implode or we explode. And so anger itself, it will come out in bursts or project it on other people. And if it doesn't, we're internalizing it. And that can manifest as anything from migraines to fibromyalgia to it's dis-ease in the body. Disease is dis-ease in the body. And so skin issues, dare I say even cancer, or I mean, yes.
I have to interject. Yes, cancer. Hello, breast cancer survivor. Totally understand you, Victoria. Continue.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Unresolved anger turned inward causes disease. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's you're a testament to that. That's your story. That's your truth, right? And that I've heard that so many times in my lineage, in my own lineage, um, on my father's side, so much colon cancer. Not there was genetic testing done. There is no Lynch syndrome. There is no genetic reason why my father, his brother, his parent, both parents, all colon cancer. Like, what? My first polyps were removed when I was 32, and I've had close calls since then, right? Like, so it's is that just epigenetics? Is it what I've learned is that it's this ancestral patterning that is passed down, whether we like it or not. And I think there's so much in this area of medical research that is not known. I think there's so much about how grief manifests in the body and trauma manifests in the body, because trauma is what happens and grief is what's left, how it manifests in the body. This is not specifically researched. I don't, not that I know of.
I think very little of it is done with actual data that we can measure or replicate per se, other than subjective self-reporting. They need to be measuring levels in the body, you know. Be
And stress, right? It's so much is
it's
tied to
stressful.
stress.
What is the other
Well,
side
what
of
causes
grief?
stress? What causes stress? Grief. Grief
Yeah,
causes, like, stress
cortisol
is a
levels.
byproduct of grief in a lot
Yeah.
of ways.
Oh, absolutely. Then how do we? Well, that'd be a very interesting scientific experiment to isolate grief itself has replicated in the stress hormones. What's on the other side of grief, though,
Well, and
Victoria?
what's that?
Continue your thought, and then I'll go back to my question. I think you were going to
Well,
say
my other
something.
thought is I personally, like, I'm a veteran. My husband's a veteran. I know veterans. My dad was a veteran, went to Vietnam, slept with a knife under the mattress when he came home. Probably wasn't the same. It what I see, like, the suicide rate is so high among veterans. Excuse me. What I wish would be done, and I once went to a veterans mental health summit, and I was in a room full of social workers and psychologists, and it was a summit where people could talk about suicide prevention is what the topic was. Like, let's prevent suicide in veterans. Not a once did anybody say the word grief. Not a once. Not one time. Not once. And one thing that I find would be a fascinating study would, in terms of veterans or anybody that proceeds to go into an occupation of high intensity, like paramedics, firefighters, police, people of service in that way, how many ACEs they had as children, adverse childhood experiences, because that is easy data to collect and then follow them through to adulthood and life. Like, I would love to see a study that is so long term like that, and how we can tie it to grief and physical manifestations in that way. Anybody listening to this that's a researcher? I love research, but it seems like a gigantic project to take on. But yeah, I just think there's definitely a connection between ACEs, how many adverse childhood experiences you had in childhood, dis-ease later in life, and occupations that people feel drawn to or go into.
Oh, I love that. I love that correlation that you put together. My audience members, I want to make sure that if you're feeling inclined and want to explore whether or not you are in grief, most of us are, just so you know, and get matched to,
Grief something.
yeah, most of us are. If you're going not me, then you're lying to yourself. You want to get matched
Yeah,
up with
there's
this.
something.
You want to get it matched up with the free resources and offerings that Victoria offers on her website at theunleashedheart.com. VTHEUNLEASHEDHEART.com. Okay, I'll refer to this again, but I just wanted to get this in right now in the middle of our interview because it's really important that you know that at the unleashedheart.com website, you have resources there for you already. Okay, to get back to what we were saying. For me, I think that if we acknowledge that grief is a healthy feeling, we must acknowledge, correct? Because, like, I grew up, anger was not allowed. It was a big no no for you to express anger. There's no such thing as healthy anger. It was all bad as a result. The only anger that was role model to me in my mind was categorized as bad,
Mhm.
right? And so, as an adult, or when I was raising my kids, we were all allowed to express anger. Not to be destructive about it, but your feelings were really important. And yet I still didn't express it in myself until after I had my breast cancer and realized, oh, there's something going on. There's no history of breast cancer. And that plus whey protein, those two not good combos for my body. How does one even, we have discussed your website. They can go there. However, some people will want to explore it themselves. How does one even check in? Do I
Hmm.
have grief? Is there something I need to be addressing? Because some people like, it's literally, I used to be this person. What do you mean you want me to play? You know, I had a dear friend who lost a son. He unalived himself a number of years ago. And 2 years later, her community, not me, I couldn't fathom losing a child. But 2 years later, her family and friends were asking her, why aren't you over it? Like, so it's extreme cases like that. And also, those of us don't understand we're quietly holding grief or having grief or experiencing grief. Let's start there. What are some signs? What does that mean from your perspective for us to start looking at ourselves?
Yeah. So I'll speak from my experience, personal experience, that it took me 30 years to sit with my grief and look at and actually, have a come to Jesus with myself that grief was my issue, first of all. So it's really self-awareness. I had another loss. I had two losses. One was completely unrelated. One was a friendship, like a newer friendship, but I felt like this person was like a kindred spirit. We connected on a, spiritual level. It was, she became a dear friend really quickly. And I sabotaged that. I wasn't in a place or I could not, I was not in a place where I could match where she was at. Like I realize now, in hindsight, I was like 20 steps behind her. And, and so energetically, like I felt looking back, like I was an energetic sponge. I was an energy vampire. And, and I can say that now. And at the time I was very hurt and I didn't understand. And then I also had another loss. My uncle, who was very close to my dad, it was my dad's brother, because my dad passed away when I was 8. And when he passed away, that entire side of the family was no longer in my life for reasons that I'll leave to the adults, which is ridiculous. But um, just know that if you're a parent and you have children, like your choices impact your children, whether, think about your children. Even if you don't particularly like the people, like your child does not need to be collateral damage in that. Okay. That's my piece on that. Um, but yeah, so my uncle, my mother had told me that he was diagnosed with brain cancer. Well, actually, he had colon cancer that spread to his brain, but he was in the hospital and I decided to go see him. I had not seen him for 30 years and walked into the hospital and it was like it wasn't like I need to go see him because I need to heal something within me. I didn't even know why. I honestly, I was going to see him. I just felt like this pull, like this gravitational pull. I need to see him. And I feel like it was my dad kind of pushing me to that. Not only just for me, but also for him, because I feel like there was a lot of emotional, um, we were both emotionally incomplete, and we needed this meeting to happen in order to address what was left 30 years prior that had nothing to do with me, but that the stories that were passed down. I wanted to see and feel for myself, because I didn't, it's like this anger that other people feel does not have to be mine. I don't need to carry this for generations forward. And so it was the most healing thing I could have done for both of us, I think. We had 6 months to reconnect. I felt closer to my dad than I had since he passed when I was 8. And it was nearly 30 years to the day when I went to see my uncle. And that was in the editing phase of my book, actually. And so it was like the timing was just uncanny, and just the whole experience. And it was then that I realized, oh my gosh, grief is my issue. It just opened up all this old stuff, right, that I had not addressed and looked at. And that's when I went to Google and found the grief recovery method. And I'm like, this is it. This is the answer. This will help me. But initially, though, the lens I was looking at it through was, I can help other people. That I can help other people. I want to help other people. This is it. This can help so many people. And I had no idea what I was honestly getting into for myself, because had someone told me how this is going to absolutely flip your life on its head and shift every belief you had, so many beliefs about grief and loss, and you know and when my dad died, there wasn't any talk of the relationship continuing on. None of that. Like, it wasn't like, well, you can still talk to him, or it was like, he died, he was put in the ground, and that was it. That was it. Life carries on, let's move on. And we don't about it. And there was no room for my emotional. I would, and I've always had like big emotional swings. That's just who I am. It's how I'm designed. If you're familiar with human design, manifester, emotional manifester, with a 35-36 channel, which, if anybody is familiar with it, that is the channel of crisis. And so, yeah, my life has been like one crisis after another. I'm here to experience life in the deepest lows and the highest highs, and then reflect on that experience. And that's, I mean, I've had so many experiences in my life: um, military deployment, entrepreneurship, motherhood, so much loss, trauma experiences, molested as a child, right after actually my dad passed away, and my grandmother. So my mother was like completely checked out emotionally, unless it was, her own emotions coming out, right? Because I became her own emotional caretaker
Mhm.
after her mother and my father passed. And so, yeah, I had to grow up fast. I didn't have much of a childhood that felt safe and secure. And it's taken me probably up until the last 5 years to really create that within my body myself, and nurture that. Yeah.
I
I mean, there
really
was a
appreciate.
lot there I said, but
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the fact that you were so honest, because I would say a lot of us don't understand the impact of childhood experiences until way later. Like, we connect all the dots later. And
Mhm.
the fact that you are absolutely of a product now of what you help people achieve, when they enter into a recovery or healing or understanding better of what grief plays in their lives. I mean, I think for me, because one of the questions you said we could ask about was around the idea of like, why is forgiveness so important in grief? And I'll tell you, one of the hardest things I thought would be forgiving my parents for my childhood. It was actually forgiving myself. And that's a really interesting topic because. Thanks for listening to the Dance to Heal podcast with Jenny C. Cohen. Come back next time to hear stories of inspiring triumph and learn more ways that you can heal yourself. To work with me and continue your journey, visit danceandheal.com. Are you ready to move?